We had been working with a children's hospital for cancer treatment. They got hit on a Friday, and they were very concerned about all the kids on Monday morning not being able to get their cancer treatments. That PM came to myself and the director of the team and said, I need every resource possible. We need to have them up and running by Monday morning. We do not want any kids to miss their cancer treatments. No one thought we could do it, and we did it.
Hey there, friend. You're listening to The Hot Mess Hotline, and this is Stephanie Crevens. You are totally in the right place if you're an ambitious leader who wants to pull off a big, transformational project. In the past, we would have called this change management, but I don't think that change management is enough anymore. We need something more nuanced for the rest of the 21st century. And that's what we have for you right here on this podcast. We teach you how to lead with strategy, innovation, flexibility, and focus for new business results, digital transformation, tough decisions, and so much more. Whatever you're working on, we've got hard-earned lessons from executives to make you more adaptable and to put into practice as soon as this episode is over. Today's conversation is with Pam Diaz. She's the CEO and president of Intera, a security-first extended service provider, or as I like to call it, and she does too, an XSP. That is so cool, isn't it? XSP. Under her leadership, Intera has been recognized for several awards due to its forward-thinking and strategic security solutions by CRN, MSSP Alert, and channel partners across the country and across the globe. Pam is the co-founder of ForCheck, an automated incident management, remediation, and resilience platform built for ingesting incidences from security providers. Today's conversation is focused on empathy and so much more, and the pivots that Intera had to take coming out of the pandemic. Let's go. All right, Pam, tell us about your hot mess, please.
Well, first and foremost, Stephanie, thank you so much for having me. I am excited to talk about my hot mess. It's an interesting one. My story is really about one hot mess that turned into another hot mess that turned into a hot mess that now is about half of our business. So during COVID, when we first went into lockdown, we were a fully in-house company. We went to fully remote overnight. The issue was we had probably about 5 full-time resources dedicated to clients on site. They were highly paid resources that went in and day out to the client's site. Well, the clients shut down as well. So their contracts had them, they were going to have to continue to pay us. Empathy is a core value of ours. So the leadership team and I had long and hard conversations about this, but we let all of those clients out of those contracts.
Wow.
What that did is it impacted our revenue by about 12% on a downward trajectory right at the beginning of COVID. And we then had a surplus of resources that we now had to figure out what to do with, and also try to figure out how we could make back that 12% of revenue.
Yes.
For an entrepreneurial organization. That's very difficult.
Yes.
And we, thankfully, these resources, all of our resources are very highly technical. So we knew we could put them on projects. But as you know, a lot of people stopped spending money. A lot of people, but what didn't happen was ransomware and threat actors did not stop during that time. It actually turned up. We never did that work before, but we had an opportunity from an old employee, or a former employee, not old, he was rather young, but former employee that I've always kept in touch with, and he's kept in touch with many of our other employees. And he reached out to say he has this opportunity that his team can't do because they just didn't have the skill or the bandwidth to do it. And he thought of us. And that started our initial foray into the ransomware recovery space. And that was a very scary leap of faith, knowing that if you went into this space and you didn't do it well, that you were going to basically be blackballed in the industry. So you didn't want to do that.
Yes.
But we knew that we could help because we do have really smart engineers, and it felt like the right thing to do to help people. in this time. And so we did. And it's, fast forward now, we're in a great space, but there were a lot of, oh, well, look at all the thousands of hours that we've worked and we haven't gotten paid yet.
Oh,
did we just make the biggest mistake of our professional careers? Like, is this actually going to happen? It's because we didn't know enough about the industry at the beginning of how this works with the insurance carriers and how payments happen. And so over time, we've learned so much more. But every environment we go into is a complete hot mess that we have to help them get out of that and get back up and running. So long story short, our hot mess has really been a blessing. But looking at it today, going through it, it was a process, I must say.
Oh my gosh. All right. So the hot mess baked into the hot mess. I mean, it's kind of like a turducken at this point, right? We've got COVID, we've got 5 full-time staff that are highly compensated, have to be pulled off-site because it was the right thing to do, absolutely the right thing to do, where they didn't need your services, and empathy is a core value of yours. And we all know, karma goes around what we put out, right? And so even though it was we didn't know how long at that point, you knew that was the right thing to do. But also because empathy is a high value of yours, you took care of a former employee who now comes back and says, hey, Pam, can you guys help us? We're in a hot mess because, as we all know, bad people, again, karma comes around, bad people, they're like, oh, y'all are dealing with something really hard. We should insert some ransomware and see what we can get out of it.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that's a great summary.
And then it creates the opportunity to leverage 5 folks that needed something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anne and Tara had some revenue to rebuild.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So interestingly enough, it started with the 5 folks that came back, but then it grew and it grew. The interesting thing about the hot mess of ransomware is depending on the size of the opportunity, you may have 30 people working full-time 24/7 on incidents until they are getting back up and running. So we also were able to pull additional resources from our existing bench that may have had additional bandwidth, because we weren't sure if this was a one-time thing that would then no longer turn into something. But even after maybe the first 6 months of doing several different recoveries, and interestingly enough, I think it was the first 5 opportunities that we had, they fell through. Okay. So we were spinning up people, we had resources, we're ready to fly, we're ready to do everything. And then they're like, they didn't sign. And it happened over and I was like, oh gosh, so maybe this isn't really something we should be doing, because we felt like it was a churn and we weren't actually going to close anything.
Yes.
But because of that, because we stuck in there with that partner, the next very big opportunity they brought to us, and it was huge. Normally they wouldn't do that with a new partner that they work with, but they saw what we did over those 5 different engagements that fell through. They said, you know what? We're gonna see what you can do. And our team rose to the occasion, as they have in every opportunity since then, and continue to just thrive in that space. But over time, you have to start making some really incredibly tough and crystal ball type of leadership decisions. Like, does this have legs? Will it stand the test of time? It's more consultancy if you think of it in that way. We're an XSP, so we're an MSSP background. That's who we are today. But when this happened, we were really an MSP, and that's recurring revenue. We didn't do a lot of consultancy. So this was all new to us, and it was something that you couldn't really put in your forecast because you didn't know.
Yes.
So all these numbers were like, I'm trying to work with my owner and let her know that we're basing this on a gut feel. And, oh, by the way, we want to hire people just to stand up to stand up a new team.
Yes.
And you can't forecast that. And so a lot of it was just really, really gut type of decision making, and hoping that that you're understanding the marketplace enough to make those decisions. That obviously every decision has some risk component to it.
Of course.
But trying to reduce as much risk as possible to make sure that, one, we are going to get paid, because we finally did get paid, but it took.
Because cash flow is important.
Right. And
yes.
we have to continue to pay our resources,
yes,
regardless of if we get paid. So cash float is a real thing in this business. And so when you're jumping into it with both feet because you're just trying to help,
yes,
you don't really, I don't know if we really had the time to sit there and go, okay, what are the 15 things that we need to assess right now? We were just in reactionary mode.
Yes.
Because we knew we needed additional revenue. We knew we had amazing resources that could do this work. And that's where we focused. And it's that leap of faith that sometimes finds you the most growth. The things that scare the crap out of you, what I've found in my many, many years of leadership, those are the times that you find the most growth within your industry, within you as a leader, and within your team.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So many good lessons here. One of the things I want to highlight that I think is important for listeners and business leaders is a lot of companies that are in any kind of consulting space, their dream is to have the stability of revenue that an MSP type service provider on retainer has. And so oftentimes their businesses, the revenue is ebbs and flows. Pipeline is ebbs and flows. I don't know a consulting business that doesn't struggle with that. And they're looking for stability in revenue. You all had the exact opposite problem. Right. But it comes with the exact same challenges of going from one normal way of working to another creates questions and answers that you've never had to ask and answer before. And it has the same impact of disruption.
Right.
I think.
Yes, 100%. So it's a completely different business model, but thankfully we did have that recurring revenue base.
Yes.
And the interesting piece about this ransomware recovery portion of what we don't do digital forensics. That's something we don't do, but that's part of it.
Okay.
So learning the things that we didn't do, but the things that we did incredibly well, and focusing in on that. And over the course of 3.5 years, we've grown our partner bench significantly. We started out with one partner, and we still have that same partner, very, very valued partner. But we've grown that partnership so we can expand our team and we can expand what we're doing in the marketplace, because we do the recovery piece. So we help businesses stand back up after this happens.
Yes.
We are doing everything that we can to get them up and running as fast as possible. And I think one of the things that we did as a team, when this comes in, when ransomware issues come in and you get pulled in, they may say, here's 1,000 hours. That's what we estimate this is going to take to get this company back up and running.
Yes.
Now our team could go, great, 1,000 hours. Let's see how we can slowly, methodically make sure we use all that time. That's not how we do it. We can go in and say, okay, we've done 300 hours. We're done. You're back up. And then what? Like, it is not a long drawn out process. It is get in, get them back up and running as fast as possible, and not cost them or the insurance carriers the most that you can charge them, right? You're trying to get in and out as quickly as possible. And I think that's where our team has really earned the respect in the industry, is knowing that they can come in and their, knock on wood, hasn't been an environment they haven't been able to restore.
Amazing.
And so we've done, I think to date, the last number was 125,000 hours of incident response work in the last 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And we now have a fully dedicated team that has approximately 20 full-time resources and
Wow.
a contractor bunch of 40 plus, because it's an ebb and flow type of business. And we have to be very elastic without impacting the bottom line with full W-2 employees.
Okay. So many questions. Okay. So help me understand, because I want listeners to understand, like, this was a huge pivot in a relatively short amount of time with a global pandemic layered on top of it. And if I remember correctly, it was basically March 2020 till about May, June 2020, where everything was on hold. The world was just on hold. And we're like, oh, we'll be back to work next week. Oh, no, wait, we'll be back to work in 2 weeks. No, we'll be back to work in 2 weeks. And it just kept going. And then when folks realized, okay, we're really probably not going to be back to work, let's start problem solving in a new way. What was your timing in terms of pandemic? We've got 5 resources that come back in-house. Then we have this recovery opportunity. And then we have 5 more, but those don't go through. And then 1 does go through. What was the general timing during 2020 for that?
We shut down, I think it was March 16th, 2020. That's when everybody went fully remote. 2 weeks to end the spread. Turned into forever, it seemed like. I believe we kicked off our first project at the end of April. So between March and the end of April, all this was happening. It was such a unique, and I say it was a blessing because I truly think like there's everything aligned, and it was such a unique opportunity for us. We did not want to, no matter what happened, we did not want to lose any of our employees. We knew it was a very hard time for the entire world, right? It was not just us that was having the problem. It was all of our companies were having those, everybody. We were essential workers. So we still had to have some of our team go on site when things went wrong. Thankfully, there was no one, for the most part, in those locations because everybody was home. But we found ourselves in a unique situation, even in some of these recovery aspects. At that time, most of the recovery was being done in person. And so you had to plan for, do they have masks? Do they have, are we having to wear a full suit? Are we having, what does that look like? Rules of engagement when you're there. Will you have, and we didn't want to put our employees in harm's way. So all of these things were playing into it. So not only were you trying to, navigate a new space, but navigate to keep your employees safe. Yes. If God forbid something did happen while they were there, how are you going to quarantine them? How are you going to get them home? How are you? All of those things. And thankfully, everyone in our team, on our leadership team, and even in our business, we all put our heads together. Everybody was giving ideas and thoughts. And it wasn't just me sitting there going, I know exactly how this is going to work. That is not my leadership style. It never will be more of a dictatorship. It is really.
Wait, being a fortune teller isn't in the CEO job description?
I mean, it is, but a little bit. But
it's more based on gut versus crystal ball. But yes.
Yes. I mean, but honestly, it's one of those things where anytime a CEO, you're the one who's making the final decision.
Yes.
You're the one who's saying, yes, let's try this. Let's do it after you're assessing those risks. And when things happen so quickly. So we locked down and went to a fully remote company on the 16th of March. And by end of April, we're actually doing some recovery work.
Wow.
In a ransomware space, which we're meeting people on their worst day. And part of that is how we've learned from that space, and now we have become an XSP, an extended service provider, because we're seeing what's happening in the wild. We're seeing what's happening in the ransomware space. We're protecting ourselves. We're protecting our clients.
Yes.
And what we've really tried to do, believe me, I love the revenue in this space. Who wouldn't, right? It's revenue that if you're getting business, you can count on, and it helps you build the rest of your business. But at the end of the day, we want to be on the proactive side of it. So we're out speaking at conferences, talking about the proactive nature. What can you do to stop the ransomware threat? how it becomes a help desk ticket versus business down. Completely different pieces of it. But we really want, we want the world to understand that there are some basic things you can do to help this ransomware stop and not impact your business and not have you worried about your own job. Because the people we meet in those hot messes, everyone is a different hot mess. And some are really, really messy.
Yes.
Some are just, a lukewarm mess, but some are inferno type hot messes.
Yes.
And you have to just navigate. You're navigating. And I think the reason our engineers are so great at it is because empathy is a core value, as is excellence, as is evolution. Everything that we're thinking about and execution, every aspect of what we do has them putting themselves in the seat of the person they're working with.
Yes.
And they see the fear, and they try to help them just go, we've got this. We're going to get you. We're going to get you back up and running. Even if it's a bare metal restore, we're going to do that. We're going to do it from scratch if we have to, but we will get you back up and running.
Yes.
We have hero complex. I would love to say, because we do have a bunch of heroes on that team. They love to be in that seat where they can tell the stories that they tell.
That we know they can't because of the nature of cybersecurity.
Exactly. You can't tell the names, but you can, just like anything on TV, you can say XYZ, but you can't share the names.
Yes.
Even if they've been in it, even if you've seen them in the news. It's like Fight Club. We don't talk about it.
That's right. That's right.
You don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just can't.
I'm just envisioning your people, like they need to come in like all black suits, but black capes, because they're going to do some serious, amazing work, but it's stealth, but they're heroes.
Right. I think they would love that outfit, actually.
Yes, please, let's get them some uniforms. But we have to call them uniforms, Pam, not outfits.
I know, that's true. That is true. They would be They would not be happy if I said, here's your new outfit.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Okay. All right. When we're together soon, I'm gonna bring a prototype of the new outfit / uniform. Okay. Well, and I know we've talked about in our preparation for this conversation, these are clients that you're meeting for the first time through recovery work, because these are not your existing MSP clients, because you're taking care of them in a proactive way. Yes. These are folks that you are meeting for the first time on their worst day of business. How did you all learn to approach those clients differently than an MSP engagement? Those first 10 minutes that you walk through the door, it's just a different set of expectations that you have to meet. What did your team learn about this is a completely different environment, client, we approach them differently?
So what's interesting is in the MSP space, everything that you do is very programmatic. Right? You have a plan, you have a process, and you make sure you're executing on that slowly, methodically. You have change windows, you're working with the staff to make sure they know what's going on. Here, it kind of put all of that still in place. We did and have created processes that we work on in every single engagement. It's rinse and repeat. We know what to do. We know what we're doing from the collection of data to containment to restoration, and there's a plan and there's a path, and we follow that all the time. Sure. It took us a while to get there, though.
Yes.
So what the undertaking is really understanding that this is a project on steroids, if you will. The change windows are immediate. The things that you're doing are just constant, and the lines of communication are as important as anything ever. And it's not just communication with the engineer. It's not just communication with the director of IT. It's communication with the CEO, with the CIO, with the COO, with their law firms, with the digital forensics team, with the breach coach, so everything that you're doing was a different type of engagement, and you had to really understand how to level up your communication. It annoys me when people say dumb it down for C-suite. That's not what you do. You have to level it up so they understand it, based on how it impacts their firm, what the risk is to them, how we're going to navigate it, and how we work together. So thankfully, most of the people that were in that team that were working had already gone through and understood how we did our own projects. And they understood that what we were walking into was people feeling like their jobs are in jeopardy, that their company is in jeopardy, that their clients are in jeopardy. And when we started working with our team, we said, we want you to put yourself in that situation. Imagine if it were us. How would we feel? At a recent event, there was a gentleman on stage who had been impacted by an incident that impacted his MSP, took all of his client. It was ransomware. Like, it was, just hearing it in his voice gave me chills, and it gives you this visceral reaction of, gosh, I feel for him. And that's what our team does, is they feel for those individuals and they try to put themselves in that situation and then figure out the best way to get them up and running as quickly as possible. And then over time, we've realized a lot of these opportunities are people we come into, we help them recover. But what we didn't understand is that they're not fixing anything. They're just standing it back up exactly as it was when they got hit. So now we work with our partners to be a more proactive voice after the fact, to say, okay, now we've recovered, but these are the things that you need to do so this doesn't happen again.
Yes.
And allowing us to have those conversations and work with them. And thank you so much for pointing out the fact that these are not our existing clients. Our existing client base is not the people that we are doing this work for. It is all through the partner ecosystem that we built.
Yes.
That's a very important distinction that sometimes we forget to make.
we need people to know that listening in. Yes. Yes.
Like, no, that's not what we're doing. So thank you so much. That's a very important distinction.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick commercial break, and I want to come back and let's talk about the lessons learned over these 125,000 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And particularly the leap of faith and the team rising to the occasion, because those are game changers for what makes this possible.
Great.
All right. Well, we take a quick break from this amazing conversation today. I want to share with you a new tool that I have for you. I think that there's a myth in our workplaces. Well, let me say this. I know there's a myth in our workplaces that meetings have to suck, and I don't believe that whatsoever. By all accounts, our time in meetings have doubled, if not more, since the start of the pandemic. And this time with your colleagues should not be a waste of time. It should be the most valuable. So if you're looking for more resources to lead meetings that are productive, powerful, impactful, and have everyone participating, get over to my website at stephaniecrevens.com/lead kick-ass meetings and get some new tools so that when you leave a meeting with your colleagues, you're not left going, what the actual F was that? You're going, yes, we're going to take on the world together. Let's get this done, because it was an unbelievably powerful meeting. Those tools are out there for you, my friends, and they're on my website today, stephaniecrevens.com/lead kick-ass meetings. Now, let's get back into that conversation.
Pam, so let's come back to the conversation. And, the two statements that you made early on to me are keys to what got you all here as we're talking in 2023. And after you all have delivered 125,000 hours towards these attacks, which are amazing, and you said our team rose to the occasion and we took leaps of faith. And as the CEO, what did you witness from your team that said, oh my gosh, they're doing it, like they're rising to the occasion. We're going to be in this together and we're going to make it happen.
It's such a unique space for our engineers. An MSP is full of incredibly smart engineers. When we started, we have been in the financial industry, a main focus of ours for many years, in a very low latency, high touch, white glove type service.
Okay.
Very intricate networks. So we have always hired very high-end network engineers and very high-end system engineers. They are the ones that have been in the space for quite some time, and they're some of the ones that we moved over to the ransomware recovery space. because they know in an MSP world, you're working with 50 plus clients in 50 different environments. You know so much more than someone who's in a single threaded organization that only knows their own network. So the beauty of what our engineers know and what they can pull from their memory banks is so integral in them being successful in this space. But what we found, and not everybody thrives in that space.
Right.
So we tried different people, and they've gone back to the space on the MSP side because that's where they thrive. But the people that stay in this space love what they are doing. They love to see ruin turn into a fully up network where people are working again.
Yes.
It's important to them. One of our project managers had said at one point, we had been working with a children's hospital for cancer treatment. They got hit on a Friday, and they were very concerned about all the kids on Monday morning not being able to get their cancer treatments. That PM came to myself and the director of the team and said, I need every resource possible. We need to have them up and running by Monday morning. We do not want any kids to miss their cancer treatments. No one thought we could do it, and we did it. And it just gave me chills thinking about it. For him to recognize that and rally the team to say, we have to do this. Lives depend on it. It is one of those things that you never think is going to happen in an IT space. So the work that they do, it came naturally to them to start really feeling how they can help people and the rules of engagement and all the different partners. That's what myself and the director work on, to make sure that we have all of those processes and that we're ensuring that they know you can work with this partner and this is how you work with them and this is how you work with this other one. But the feeling and the ability for this team to rally is from within. We've had other engineers that go, I work on one environment and they absolutely never doing it again. Don't work with that. Because it's almost people that are like an airline mechanic. You're taking people's lives into your hands every time you make a change, every time you do something, right?
Yeah.
So they know that they're messing with livelihoods of people or their ability to do things right. So have we been perfect? No, right? Have there been things where we stepped, oh gosh, we should have done this differently, but learning from every single mistake that we have made throughout that time, or how we could do something better, or how we could be more scalable, instead of just throwing bodies at a problem and going, no, how can we create a script that could then run this much faster, right?
Yeah.
So always thinking about ways to automate, ways to just get in there and get out as fast as we can with little impact to the business.
Yes. Having people who are able to rally because it comes from within, that's an amazing differentiator. And it's not something that you can replicate, but you can certainly hire for it.
Yes. Pardon me. And we hire on our core values. We run our company on EOS, so that entrepreneurial operating system. And we have turned down engineers that don't have empathy. It's very difficult to find people who fit all four of your core values. And when we find those people, we hang on to them and we say, how are you best valued within the organization, but how can we value you as well? So we want to make sure it's a two-way street. It's not just about what you can do for Intera, but about what we can do for you. So really trying to work through that and finding engineers with empathy. At the beginning, I was like, how do you do that? I've worked with IT people for a long time and I'm not quite sure. So we have an amazing recruiting team that just can find the right people. And we're incredibly thankful for the work that they do to bring in the right people to the organization.
Yeah. And I'm guessing as CEO at this point, you're not intimately connected to the hiring process. But I also know leaders are listening in saying, there's no way you can't hire for empathy. You can't screen for that or internal drive. But clearly it's being done. Do you have any examples right off the top of your head that like this is one of our screening steps for empathy or any of your core values?
So we have people fill out details about our core values. Like, can
Okay.
you give us an example of when empathy was used? And of course, anybody can use ChatGPT to come up with something really great to say on their resume or on that questionnaire. Hopefully they're
Yes.
not, but most likely there are people doing that.
Yes.
But then during this screening process, it is within our talent acquisition coordinator, our recruiters, they're doing a lot of screenings and just conversational. They've been able to really pick up on whether somebody's truly empathetic or somebody's just telling a story to fit the narrative, right?
Gotcha.
And then they also go through many levels within our organization. I am still involved in more high level recruiting because I want to make sure that if somebody is client facing, that I can also, have some time with them to make sure that I don't feel that there are any red flags. But it's very, very interesting. We just had our Intera Day on Saturday.
Nice.
Since we're fully remote, we have one event a year that we fly our employees into and their spouses, and we just enjoy dinner and conversation. And I must say there were several people that I had to be introduced to because I had never seen them.
Oh, wow.
And it felt big and amazing, and looking
Yes.
around that room to see how we're continuing to grow, but knowing when I did meet them that they would be the perfect fit for our organization, and they were. So I know that thankfully the team doesn't need me to be involved to find the right people.
Yes. Oh, but Intera is a living example of, yes, you can screen for values.
Mhm.
Yes, you can hire for values. Yes, you can manage to values, because that has clearly been a game changer for y'all's ability to transition through the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
The pandemic was so interesting because now that we're fully remote and we chose never to go back to an office. We were incredibly lucky. Our long-term lease ended in May of 2020, and we just decided never to go back to an office. We're fully remote. We've been able to hire people all around the US, and it's been amazing. We're focusing on diversity. We're focusing on making sure that we can have the right hires and that we have the right voices at the table. And it's truly amazing to see what the team continues to do in this remote workspace. And it just, a lot of people had said it's going to be really hard to keep the culture remotely, and it has. We have to continue to work on that. But I think I'm on camera pretty much 7 hours a day, if I'm on camera at all, because we want to make sure that we see each other and that we're checking in and we're putting eyes on one another. Because part of us being empathetic creatures is, during the pandemic, we needed to make sure our employees were okay.
Yes.
Like, are you good? You look a little dead. You feeling okay? Like, having those conversations and being real with one another just allowed us to continue to thrive in that space.
Yes. I think, you said a lot of people think it's hard to make the culture work when it's remote. I feel like that's a way to say, well, we have to be intentional about it in a way we didn't have to before. It feels hard, but we just have to be intentional in a new way. Last question, and I'll let you get back to changing your part of the world there. As a CEO, when you know that you have to make a decision that is a leap of faith, and you're asking your senior leadership team and everyone below them to take that leap with you, what do you want other leaders to know about what it means to be in your seat right then in those moments?
So it's interesting. There are not many decisions that I make that are unilateral. I have a leadership team. We work very closely together. We talk about it like we're the parents, right? And we have to have a united front. So when there is something that I'm about to make a decision on, I talk with my leadership team, and before we leave that meeting, we are all either agree and commit or disagree and commit. There is no, let's have dissension outside. I told them that was a bad idea. That can't happen. We all have to be in it to really in it to win it, if you will.
Yes.
But it's all about hearing different thought processes, because I don't know everything.
Nope.
Hands down, not the smartest person in the room. If I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm always in the wrong room, right? I always have to have people challenging me. I want to hear other people's input and thought process. At the end of the day, I am the one making the final decision. So if I have 2 out of my 6 leadership members that are pushing back on something, but yet that decision needs to be made, it's a disagree and commit conversation. So
Yes.
you may not believe in the vision right now, but you need to disagree and commit, and we walk out of here arm in arm and we're good. And so it's getting the buy-in from your leadership team. And if for some reason your leadership team has some cracks and you feel like it's not as solid as it needs to be, that needs to be shored up in order for the team to work.
Yes. What do you know about the implications of when folks agree to your face and then go out and say, well, I told them it was a bad idea and I told them it wasn't going to work? What does that do to the culture?
It's toxic to the culture.
Yes.
And it cannot continue to hold a place in the environment. It just can't. And the faster you can make decisions, the better you are. But being an empathetic organization, I will tell you that's difficult, because we do care about people at their core, but it's also about being stern and being focused and being thoughtful about. You said you were disagreeing and committing. You cannot go out there and do this. And those are conversations. But if the conversation then turns to, well, I'm sorry, I told you it just wasn't going to work, and see, I told you so. Like, those are just not great conversations to have. But it's about, like, what could we do differently in the next conversation? What can we do differently as a team? But that toxicity will ruin your culture very quickly. And I think there's a lot of leaders. I have been one of them. I can still be that person at times, where it takes too long to make a decision on a person.
Yes.
And you think, oh my gosh, people are going to be upset. People are, oh, what are they going to say? And when you do actually pull the trigger, they're like, about time. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What took you so long?
Okay.
Yes.
So I think all leaders have that, and maybe not all leaders, but leaders that have empathy as a core value, I'm sure, have that too. But it's trying to make decisions quickly so that toxicity doesn't breed in your organization.
Yes. Oh, agree completely. And the reason I asked that question, and I need you to answer it, because a lot of leaders that we work with need to hear that, because either they're contributing to the toxicity or they don't know how to manage it.
Right.
It's a very, I will use the word violent way to interact with the culture. And I mean that from, I try to use a communication style called nonviolence by Marshall Rosenberg. And when you create separation between people and teams, it's a very violent thing to do. Toxic is another word, but it is very real.
So it's interesting. We now have a culture committee. And one of the things that we asked the culture committee is, I said, can you please tell leadership if our communication style is working?
Yes.
We think it is.
Awesome.
In my brain, I think I'm saying all the right things, but if it's not landing, then I need to fix that.
Yes.
And so when your employees ask each other, they'll get more feedback than if leadership says, hey, is everything working? I'm not going to tell you, but they'll tell the culture committee. And that's helped us tweak how we interact. We're now doing monthly town halls, and we're doing different conversations where they just want to spend time with leadership because they don't see them in an office any longer. Yes. So being open and being available to have that feedback, good or bad, is incredibly impactful to growing a good leadership team.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this conversation and for willing to share kind of the behind the scenes of what a massive pivot looks like inside of a consulting organization, and, you know, what you've learned along the way, and to give me the opportunity to use the word turducken in a podcast.
Yes, the word turducken is amazing, and that I understood it made me feel even better, because I was like, I know what that is.
Awesome.
It's interesting. The one thing I do know that I am speaking at the Channel Futures Women's Leadership Summit, I think in Miami, October 31st. And then I'm doing a panel discussion. Then I'm also doing a presentation and really talking about how to build a culture of empathy and excellence. So
Awesome.
yeah, so I'm excited about that.
That's fabulous.
Not a lot of people talk about, but we live it and breathe it, and it's made a difference.
Oh, fabulous. All right. Well, thank you, Pam. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Stephanie. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
In some ways, in 2023, some of the lessons that came out of the pandemic are just now kind of coming to fruition, if you will, or we're able to see the forest through the trees. We're able to see the good things that have come out of the pandemic. And I feel like Pam and her team at Intera, that is certainly the story right now as we're recording this episode in August 2023. You know, the reality is they can say now with confidence that they deliver these incident response services with credibility, confidence, a level of process, and a level of uniqueness that others in the market aren't providing. And it's 3.5 years after the pandemic, right? So some of these lessons are coming together now in a really fruitful way. I want to sum up for you the lessons that I'm taking away from our conversation. And I would encourage you, if you got anything out of this episode too, forward this to another pro troublemaker in your network who needs to learn from Pam's wisdom. And here's what I got. You know, I loved how she said, right, we rose to the occasion. And I know so many successful teams that is a secret to their success, is that they are able to rise to the occasion together. The second one is oftentimes, and I would say probably most of the time, taking a leap of faith is a leap of faith, and it's a gut feel. And sometimes we look to our leaders to have all of the answers. And as Pam and so many other vulnerable guests on this podcast have been willing to admit, we don't have all of the answers. But oftentimes what we do is what we do have is the bravery to say, take this leap with me. And by the nature of the trust and the empathy that they hold, we're willing to follow them. Whenever I hear a leader talk about this, I cannot not think of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. If you remember the part where in order to get to the Holy Grail, he has to take a leap of faith and he just has to walk into that empty cavern and the path reveals itself. And I think so much of bold decision making in businesses is the exact same thing. You can look down and see nothing but your demise and your death because there's just a deep cave there, or you can trust that the path will reveal itself as you're walking it. And that was certainly true in this leap of faith that Pam asked the rest of Intera to take. And the last one that I'll leave you with, and I want this to be your mantra too, whatever function you have in your company, this is not about dumbing down our communications for others, especially when we're in a really technical field and you're a technical expert. The way of leadership is to level up the communication, because what the CEO, the CISO, the CIO, the CMO, or the person responsible for PR during a cybersecurity issue, what they care about is leveled up strategic communication that describes and details how this is touching the various parts of the business, not the technicalities of the breach or the incident or whatever the specific business problem is you're solving. It's not that you're dumbing it down, you're leveling it up to a more, I keep using the word strategic, that feels really cliche at this point, but you're leveling it up to a point where they understand how this issue affects various business functions or units or customer-facing perspectives, because that's the level at which they have to think about on a day-to-day basis as well as run the company from. So when you're in the C-suite, you're constantly thinking about what connects the various departments. That's integration of the business and how you can integrate more functions. And so that's the lens through which they have to communicate, as well as with the lens with which they take in information and are trying to solve a problem for the company, not just in the narrow band of IT. And so I love how Pam said, this is not about dumbing it down, it's really about leveling it up. So think about ways whenever you are with your boss, your boss's boss, your boss's boss's boss, right? Someone with a chief next to their title, level up the communication so that you're communicating from a perspective that connects the various departments not just speaks to a very technical perspective inside of IT. All right, my friends, that is what I have for our amazing conversation today, and I can't wait to see you next time on the Hot Mess Hotline.